Let's start bringing everybody together. Yeah, Holly's here, of course. Is Kari? Didn't see her. Wayne's supposed to be. Is Wayne going to be in person or? Yep. And I haven't heard from Yolanda. Oh, okay. Yolanda, are you online? I don't think so. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're missing Rick. All right. Yeah, there's Wayne. Yes.
Right now.
Howdy, Wayne. It's good to see you.
Well, he also brought my joint thing.
All right, I think I see a quorum here. I'm going to call today's 8 September PPRTA meeting to order, and we will begin. First, we'll establish that we do have a quorum. I think I counted right. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep, I see that we have a quorum. The first issue for today, we need to approve the agenda for today. I call for a motion to
Move to approve.
looking for a second. We have a motion and a second. Yes.
One quick note, if you guys can make sure to state your names when making motions so that we can catch them on Zoom in the room and for the minutes.
On Zoom in the room. I like
Thank
it.
you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Commissioner,
And please continue to correct us. But I really mean that. So
Commissioner Gonzalez, move to approve.
Dennis Carpenter, second.
Mayor Carpenter.
Yes, Mayor Carpenter. Good to throw that in there.
Okay, any discussion? There is none. All in favor, state aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It carried. The motion carries. The agenda is approved. All right. The number 3 item is public comment periods items on the agenda. Do we have anyone first, I'll look out in the audience. Anyone in the audience for public comment for items not on the agenda? Okay, I don't see any. How about online? Do we have any public, individuals out there online? I don't see any. Do we have any? No, I don't see any. Okay, I do not see any public comment. We'll move to item 4, approval of the minutes from our August 11th, 2021 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Do I have and that would be the vice chair?
Commissioner Williams, yes, moving.
And do I have a second?
Second.
From Director Williams. Thank you. Any discussion? None? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I have none. The minutes have been approved. All right, item number 5, Citizens Advisory Committee monthly report. Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Jim Godfrey, Chair of the Citizens Advisory Committee. So for our meeting last week, we went over the budget calendar that Bev's going to present to you today and recommended a positive recommendation on that calendar. Also, on the second budget amendment, it will be presented to you. And we also made a positive recommendation on the second budget amendment. We looked at 7 contracts that were presented to us from the city. Good answers, good discussion, and a final recommendation for you on that is to support that as the city presents. We also had a very good presentation on the collaboration between Silver Key and Vita and Fountain Valley Senior Services. It was an information only item. But in a previous life and years ago, I was participating in the mobility committee when this whole thing started. And I'll tell you, the progress that these people back here have made in support of the senior citizens in this committee are in this town and region is phenomenal. And so I hope you enjoy that presentation. Sorry, I get emotional because it's such a needed service. And
Good.
to see the progress that they've made is good. We also had a discussion on PPRTA matrix to add item number 17, which is the one we discussed last board meeting about greenhouse gases and the impact on the A and B list. And so we add that, and you'll hear that today too. And then the city provided a good update on PPRTA funding for the, I guess it's now called the Park Union Ped Bridge. There had been a question raised in the previous CAC meeting on a contract amendment about where were we on the cap that the board had set for RTA funding for that project. So Gail presented us with a presentation on how the total project does and what part of that was RTA and how that broke down. So that answered our question. That was good. And then I represent the RTA CAC on several other committees. And so I did a report out on those. I'm on Plan COS or Connect COS, which is the city's long range planning committee. And I'm also on the Platte Avenue corridor study. Nothing really to report out, but I felt like representing the CAC that I needed to update them on where we were and what's going on. So other than that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, I'll first look for questions out in the audience, the members out in the audience, questions. Online, do we have anyone online? And I'll need help. I don't see any hands. Nope.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, with that said, we need to approve we need to accept, I should say, the Citizens Advisory Committee monthly report. Do I hear a motion to accept the report?
Commissioner Williams, so moved.
Commissioner Gonzalez, second.
Any discussion? Okay, there is none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? There is none. The motion passes. The Citizen Advisory Committee monthly report is accepted. Next is Bev with our financial reports.
Good afternoon. I do not have any news on item A, the monthly reports, because they have not, the information hasn't come down from the State Department of Revenue yet. It's a little early in the month and there was a holiday, so we'll skip that and I'll send it out as soon as I have it. Then on the budget calendar and revenue estimate, the budget calendar is very similar to last year's and it satisfies the legal requirements of the state. And we need to get it approved by the board. And then the Citizens Advisory Committee recommended approval. And then we should discuss the sales and use tax revenue estimate for our 2022 budget. That the estimate will go out to the member governments so that they can start compiling their budget. So first for the calendar. Approval of the calendar.
Did we get a package?
Yeah, this is for Delito.
Oh, it's in medicine.
Yeah, it's in the read ahead that we got.
I move to approve the proposed RTA 2022 budget calendar.
Do we have a second?
This way.
I'll second John Graham.
Okay, Mayor Graham seconded. Up for discussion. And there was, Yolanda, did you have a question on that?
Oh, am I not muted? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes, I can.
You were not muted.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm on my phone now. But you
That's
guys
all
don't
right.
see me. Do you see me?
Yes, yes, we do.
Oh, that's terrible. Okay.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Thanks. I'm gonna mute now.
Yeah, okay. All right, no other discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All
Aye.
opposed? There is none. We've approved the 2022 budget calendar.
So for now, then, we want to establish what the board would like to see in the 2022 revenue estimate for sales and use tax. And I propose that something that we are using right now, 138 million for the second amendment to the 2021 budget. And if you want to go wild, maybe 140 million just to round it up, but I really wouldn't go any higher than that. And we always have the amended mid-year budget to either add revenue to.
Yeah, let's discuss that a little bit. So am I hearing the two options, 138 or 140 million are the two recommended options? Yes.
Let me ask this because this affects a number of entities as they go forward with respect to the city and county, less so because we've got flexibility to shift funds from project to project. But when you're talking about the maintenance dollars, the mid-year adjustment is an important part. But I don't want us to be so conservative that we're automatically gonna need to do that. Because when we do that, it's hard for our friends in Rama to find a $200 paving contract, for example, if that's how much their percentage increases by. And it's hard for transit to not plan for a whole year, period. So I want us to be conservative, but not reactionary. So Bev,
One
what
of
do you
my
think?
issues is that we can't determine how much of the catch-up sales and use tax for internet sales is in the last year. We know it's significant. We know it was significant last year too, but that is going to dry up next year. It's like petering out is what they're telling me at the state, because they've been doing a lot of audits and they're coming to a close on that. And that was a catch up for when it was enacted, I think, was that 2020 or 2019? Where we
Okay.
started really, I think 2020, where we really started collecting in July, the sales and use tax on internet sales. So I'm concerned about that. Like, how much is that? It can't be determined because most of the vendors report that number in with their regular sales and use tax.
Okay, so we're at 138 right now. We're anticipating revenue higher than that.
Mhm.
What was our last, how much over the 138 level? I know we don't have this month's, but
Well, no, but we could be up to 140 million.
could
We
be or
added
likely will
22
be.
million to this amended budget.
Yeah,
That's a lot. I mean, it was needed. but
And we still have 100 million always in reserve, right?
No, we have
Oh,
10%.
10%, okay.
So we have that. One of the things, like transit has a huge carryover every year. And then they have the federal funds from the stimulus. So
Okay.
they're going to plan whatever they're going to plan. The smaller member government, it's true. They're not going to be able to add a tiny bit each time we do an amendment. I mean, unless they're doing things like gravel, and then they
Right.
can do that. but-
so you believe the 138 is safe. You're not sure on the 140, or you think the 140 is safe?
Well, if I really knew, I wouldn't be here.
True, but you are our
But you are
advisor.
here. You are here.
I think that 138 is good. You know, one of the things I'm very concerned about is we've had so much stimulus money flowing through the economy that it's, I don't know how long that is going to go on and that type of thing. One of the things that some of the member governments said, and it only happened once, was when we reduced our budget mid-year. And that just threw a monkey wrench into everything. So,
It's easier to add than
Okay.
subtract. Is it?
and
Yeah.
yet you don't want to have it like this year where it was just so incredibly
Yeah.
off.
Okay, so, and I guess, while our reserve might be 10%, the reality is we have cash of 100 million plus because of the nature of how the
Mm.
entity operates. So it's, we have a little bit more of this there. I guess, given that, I would support 138, and I would move that we set
The amendment.
the budget calculations based on the 138
For
projected revenue
2022.
for 2022.
And we should be coming out with the new decennial census, I've heard, next Thursday. So after that, then I'll get the allocations out to the member governments because it's going to change the maintenance calculation or allocation. But it really won't change the capital because that'll be based on when the planning took place in 2012, which was the prior decennial census.
Gonzalez seconds.
Yes. Okay, so we had the motion and the second for the 138 million as our 2022 revenue estimate. That's what I heard, the motion and the second. Any further discussion?
You don't have that in there?
Say that again, Mayor? Is there anyone else online wanting to discuss that? Yeah, I think so. Okay, I hear no further discussion. Do I see a hand? No, no. Nothing. No further discussion. We will vote on this motion. All right, all in favor of our 2022 revenue estimate of 138 million, say aye.
I,
Aye. All opposed? We have none. The motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the next item is the 2021 second amendment to the budget. We added $22 million of sales and use tax in this amendment. Last amendment, we added 11 million. So now our revised total sales and use tax revenue estimate is 138 million. The date and time of this public hearing has been noticed in the paper. The Citizen Advisory Committee made a positive recommendation for approval of the budget as presented, and will need to open the public hearing, hear public comment, close the public hearing, and then vote to approve the budget and appropriate the funds in one vote. And I don't know how the board wants to go through this, if they want to go through it in detail, if they just like to ask some of the member government representatives questions, or how you would like to proceed.
I'll leave that. I'll open up the floor for asking the questions to our members here representing the government. All right. My first question would be, do we anticipate, I mean, we're only at obviously, we're just the beginning of September. What do we think we're going to have increase over the next 3 to 4 months?
Gail answered that at the CAC meeting. She's giving me a look right now. She gave a good explanation of what they're going to do with their additional funds.
so Director Helms, just to make sure I understand, you want to know what the city specifically would use, the capital funds, maintenance funds, or a transit, or all three? Is that? did I
All three,
understand?
yeah.
Okay.
Well, I was thinking we're approving, we're opening it up now for discussion I'm just trying to look ahead a little bit and see what we think we're even going to be more
Okay.
over the next
Right, I
quarter.
just wanted to make sure I
Yeah.
understood, not what we're proposing to use the current budget amendment, but beyond that.
Yeah,
So if revenue is beyond it, we would not anticipate a third budget amendment for the 21 budget. We would wait until we really looked into the mid-year of 22 and do carryover.
okay, that's
Um,
good.
And Bev, I think that's consistent with what your process is as well. But I'm happy, if you have specific questions on how we use amendment to funds, I'd be happy to answer those as well.
Sure, if you want to break that out just a little bit, in a broad range.
Yeah, so if you go and look, and I have it detailed in our memorandum, bullet point on the projects where we're adding those capital funds and then detailed on the table, but several of those, a handful of those projects, we're really looking to advance the years that they could be completed. So for example, I'm going to pick on the West Fillmore culvert or bridge replacement. That's a project that originally was not scheduled to go to construction in 2024. If you look at our pie chart, we knew we were going to have a handful of projects in construction 23, 24, and maybe even into 25 for sure. But what we were trying to do is find those discrete projects that we could try to advance and either have them in
Mhm.
construction or completed in advance of the PPRTA 3 ballot initiative in November 22. So we're trying to accelerate those either for moving construction dollars forward, moving right-of-way acquisition dollars forward, finishing up design earlier, so we're prepared to go to construction sooner. Is that
Thank you.
the
That-
answer you were looking for? Bev?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I just want, for those out in the public that may be listening, give them an idea of what we're actually going to do. Other floor discussion or even online? Again, I don't see any hands raised out there. Okay. I think, will that bring us to the close of the public?
Well,
You have to open the.
you have to
public
open the
hearing?
public hearing.
Yeah. So we're opening.
Yeah, no, just go ahead and public hearing.
Yeah, let's, I opened a public hearing for this discussion.
There you go.
Yep. I need a gavel. Oh. I asking. Thank you. Well,
And now,
I open public discussion. There we go. And I don't see anybody online, in the audience, any public discussion for.
so now you close the public hearing.
Yes. I will now close public discussion.
This Wayne, I would move approval of the amended 2021 second budget
Thank you, Director Williams.
And appropriation of the funds.
and appropriation of the funds.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Yolanda second.
Thank you, Yolanda. We have a second. Any further discussion? I hear none. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None. The
Thank you.
motion passes. Thank you so much, Beth. Hey, we got through that. All right, that leads us to item number 7, 2021 capital maintenance and public transportation contracts. I think, Gail, are you up with
I
that?
am, yes. Director Helms, Gail
Right.
Sturdivant, City of Colorado Springs City Engineer, Deputy Public Works Director. The city is pleased to bring 7 contracts forward for the board's consideration and approval. I'll go through each one in detail, and if you have questions as I'm going through, please feel free to stop me.
Roger that.
The first contract is for the Academy Reconstruction projects. If you recall, there are 2 phases on the A list, we've got the section from Bijou to Airport and then the second section from Fountain to Milton Prairie Parkway. This change order is in a total dollar amount of $121,200 to AECom for some additional utility potholing reparations, repairs, and street lighting design to be incorporated into that project. Those funds would be split between those 2 separate projects. For the Bijou to Airport one, there would be $67,740 $40. And for the Fountain to Milton Proby Parkway segment, it's $53,460. Any questions on that particular contract? Okay, I'm gonna move on to our second one.
Hold on,
This,
this is Yolanda. I'm sorry, I don't know how to raise my hand, so, on
That's
this
all right.
phone.
Yeah, just shout out. That works.
Thank you. So those of you who were at PPRTA too, when this was, the South Academy Boulevard reconstruction was gonna happen, could anybody explain to me why we stopped, we interrupted the construction from Airport Road to Fountain Boulevard? I think, it was a 10-year project, like we don't know what's happening, and is it because the roads seemed okay? I just want to know that, and because I'm concerned. It's like if we're doing this project from Bijou all the way to Drennan Road, we're leaving out a really good part of South Academy Boulevard. And that's the trouble that we have in Southeast, this lack of connectivity and fluidity. So I want to figure out how, if we can do that in some shape, way, or form, to include Airport to Fountain, or what is going on. And if you all can help me with that, I would really appreciate that.
Thank you, Yolanda. Yeah, that's a good question. Is it even possible that it's a different, a 2C or a
Well,
city?
can I provide some
yeah.
clarification? So there is a segment from Airport to Fountain Boulevard that is not in PPRTA, but there is a project that is planned in that area that is funded with, and I believe it's STP Metro funding, that is going to provide pedestrian amenities and enhanced transit improvements along that corridor. Now, I wasn't here when the PPRTA 2 list was made, but my understanding is that when they looked at the pavement conditions in those segments, that pavement needed to be reconstruction, and the two parts that we are seeing, so that Bijou to Airport and the Fountain to Milton Proby Parkway area. And then along with the pedestrian amenities, enhanced transit. In this case, that segment between Airport and Fountain, the pavement was in good condition. They don't experience some of the same drainage issues and some of the historic pavement degradation in that segment. So that part was left out, and other funds were sought to provide pedestrian amenities and enhanced transit along that corridor. So there is a third project. It's just not a PPRTA project. It's in the middle.
Okay, so it's not, but there is going to be a project to bring it all up to speed where we have the new construction all the way from Bijou to Drennan Road, and that's going to come from other funding. Gail, so do you know when that's going to happen?
So there are 3 separate projects that would provide that continuity, I think, that you're looking for, that you're asking me about, between Bijou and Milton Proby Parkway. The project that's in the middle there between Airport and Fountain has a separate project. It's in the end stages of getting right-of-way approval from CDOT so we could advance the construction. Got to remember that construction on that's going to look different than it is in the others, only from the standpoint they're not reconstructing the road in its entirety. They are coming in and adding sidewalks, new transit stops, and things like that to hit the multimodal piece that's missing in that segment. And they will be tied in with the piece to the north and south with the same pedestrian amenities.
Okay, so, but do you have an idea when it's going to start? Because the South Academy construction starts right in 22, right?
Yeah, it will likely be going on sometime in 22 as well. You'll see that disrupted at the same time. As you're aware, with the Airport Road Bridge construction and then those other projects, sequencing some of those road closures or lane reductions, we're trying to sequence that all together. And I do need one more final approval from CDOT to get that project let out for advertisement for bid.
Okay, so thank you a lot. I mean, I just didn't want that to have nothing going on. I wanted it to have that fluidity from, Airport to Fountain, and, just make sure that it all tied in together nicely.
Yeah, I think you'll be happy when you see, particularly with the multimodal amenities added in that corridor, you'll see it put together in its entirety.
All right, thank you very much.
Moving on to the second contract. This is a project being led out of the city's congestion incident management signal improvement phase 1 program. It is for a school flasher system. It's in the amount of $443,160 to Gates. This is to upgrade the school flasher systems throughout the city to have integrated access control of those signals from the city's traffic control center. And we also have some cellular data that's associated with that for a multi-year contract to provide that service to the school districts.
So Wayne, let me just ask a question. So with integrating that, does that then give us the capability to make changes to when the lights are flashing?
Yeah, yes, it does.
So if a school does a delayed start, for example, the district could notify us,
Yes,
and all of the ones in that school district would then have a delayed time.
that is
period.
correct. So with the relationship between our traffic department and the facilities managers for each of those schools, as they make those decisions, they can communicate that us of any school adjustment changes, or if they have summer school, for example, where we can operate those signals remotely without having to send a tech out on site to go through and do that.
Does that mean we don't have that right now on the flasher systems for the schools?
My understanding is no, or you have some antiquated version that's challenging, requires some manual manipulation is my understanding.
And then if they don't have school because of snow closure or a teacher work day, we can program that in.
We could turn them off,
Okay,
yes.
great, thanks.
Okay. Moving on to the city's third contract. This is a change order for Felsberg, Colton, and Oliveg for additional work on the Colorado Springs Intermodal Mobility Plan, also known as Connect COS. I think you've heard that more often. The reason for this change order is to some of the enhanced public engagement or public enhancements and the tools associated that due to COVID, and in some incorporation of some additional plans that we wanted considered more holistically as we look at, and it includes maintenance plans as well as we look at transportation prioritization within the city. The city's fourth contract I'll be presenting on behalf of the city's Parks Department is for the Sinton Trail corridor improvements in the amount of $101,900 for Lucky Dog Construction. This is construction work that's going to add a half-mile trail section between the Arrows West Drive going east to the El Paso County Citizen Service Center. And there is a location map in that area. If you're familiar with that section of the trail, there's non-existing segments or segments that are very damaged, and they experience a lot of drainage issues in that particular area as well. Contract number 5 is for some additional transportation improvements under the city's program. We plan on adding 2 additional segments of sidewalk, one section on Airport Road is a little over 1,100 linear feet, and then another 850 feet on Janotel Road. These are sidewalks that are being put in place. One, they're critical for our pedestrian mobility, but it also fills in some gaps adjacent to some projects, some capital projects we're going to have going through. City's 6th contract is for additional paving. It's going to be on Constitution Avenue from Brady to Powers Boulevard, and there's a cul-de-sac there to the, I think it's the east of Brady now that I've said that. 4.71 lane miles, about 30,000 square feet of asphalt. That would be in the amount of $980,274.50 to Martin Marietta to complete that work on our behalf. And the city's last contract is also a maintenance contract. to be awarded to Wildcat Construction. And it is for the bridge that is on Union Boulevard over Templeton Gap. And there is a map provided, and I have to apologize. I noticed when my version of the map printed, you can't see the square around the bridge, but it happens to be written by the country club marker that happened. It just spills out over in that area. So if you need to know where that bridge is located, that contract is in the amount of $1,287,542.45. Going through our bridge maintenance or bridge inspections, as we do with all our bridges at certain intervals, that revealed some significant issues on the deck, leading to a major deck rehab. And then we're going to do some waterproofing on that bridge to prolong its life. So those are the city 7 contracts. I'm available for questions, and I would appreciate the board's approval of these contracts.
Ms. Wayne, I'd move approval of the city's contracts.
I look for a second.
Yolanda second. I'm excited.
Yeah, good. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of approving the City of Colorado Springs contracts, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? There are none. Motion is approved. Thank you, Gail. All right, let's see. We're up for other reports. City of Colorado Springs Transit Services Monthly Update.
Good afternoon, honorable board members. I'm Craig Blewett, Transit Services Manager with
Good
the City
afternoon,
of
Craig.
Colorado Springs. Hi. So our reports in your meeting packet, just like to go over a few highlights. Local bus route service ridership is up 29% compared to a year ago, but we're still down about a third from pre-COVID. We are coming back and coming back slowly, and but we are coming back in terms of ridership. On our Metro Mobility ADA paratransit system, similar situation. We're up considerably over last year, 37%. Let's see, 82% over last year, but we're still 37% compared to pre-COVID levels. And as noted in the report, that's due in large part to the number of day programs that have not yet fully resumed to their pre-COVID levels. Our taxi program, as I've noted before, we had suspended our taxi service, our taxi option during the worst of the pandemic. We did resume that service starting 2 or 3 months ago, and that ridership is starting to come back. We're showing 36 rides in July. I think we had 45 rides in August, so that more people are making that choice to ride in a taxi instead of our ADA paratransit, which can save us some money and also provide some additional, options to our customers. The van pool usage is still way down compared to pre-pandemic. It's mostly serving office workers in Denver who either mostly are teleworking at this point in time and probably do have also a car option. But we are going to be doing a push. I think I mentioned that last month on that program, and hope to bring it up in terms of ridership. And as I've noted, once the I-25 managed lane opens up, it's going to be a great alternative for folks. Our project update. So the fall 2021 service changes do kick in at the end of September. As noted, though, that we are continuing to have a bus driver shortage, part of the nationwide labor shortage and nationwide bus shortage. So a couple of those are being delayed. So in the packet, the addition of Sunday service on routes 22 and 23 are delayed for the time being. We are working on the on-time improvements for Route 11. That's South Nevada. It's very important. Route 37 is going to start service on September 27th. That's where we're going to go from just having a bus route to the new Amazon facility and the airport terminal to serve shift changes at Amazon, timed with shift changes. Starting September 27th, we're going to go to full service during the day with service, I believe it's every 30 to 40 minutes. And with the addition of ADA paratransit service also in that area and service to Amazon. So that's an important improvement to a major employer location. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that board members would have.
Thank you, Craig. Open for questions.
This is Yolanda, and it's maybe more of a comment, but Craig, we worked so hard to get frequencies of 15 minutes for routes 1 and 27, which travels through Southeast, right?
Yeah.
One to town and Southeast, and the other up and down Academy Boulevard to the Citadel. And those were 15-minute routes. And I know we have the funding for it, we have the money, but we don't have the drivers. So I think I just want all the board to know how concerning that is. You know, the people in my district use that transportation to get to work when it's once an hour. And if you're looking at to go to the Citizen Service Center, and that's an hour bus, again, we're back to 3 hours one way getting to the service center. And we're starting a new route to the airport, which I totally am in sync with, but we'd not have the frequency. I mean, not even a half hour, it's a full hour now from 15 minutes. And that's really concerning. I just want to put creative heads together to figure out how we can remedy this.
There's no question. It breaks our heart to, we have the revenue, we have the funding to provide that service. We don't have the drivers to do that. So we are working very closely with our contractor. You know, all bus drivers, fixed route bus drivers are employees of our contractor, RATP Dev. We're working very closely with that contractor to improve recruitment for bus drivers. It's really a situation of increased attrition and reduced recruitment. Some of the attrition is due to the pandemic itself. Some of it is due to the increased rudeness of riders, if I may say, and some of the confrontations with masks and so forth. You know, transit is in the same position as airplanes and trains. Masks are required through at least January, and we're still seeing confrontations. Unfortunately, we do have masks on all buses to give out to try to avoid that, but some folks are really hard fast in their beliefs. So with RATP Dev, they are looking at a number of options. They do have a recruiter that's dedicated to Colorado Springs. We have 7 drivers, I believe, completing our training this week and next, which will help. And we were able to start Route 40 yesterday, a week late, for Pikes Peak Community College. And one of the points I think that Councilmember Avila made as well is that, you know, when we have to cut routes, we are looking to reduce frequency rather than eliminate entire routes. We're trying to do our best we can to provide at least a basic level of service for everyone. 1 hour service is not good enough for anyone. So we're working very hard to restore that, and we hopefully have better news when I report back to you next month.
Thank you, Craig. I just wanted all the board members to know the depth and the many layers that this has taken on, you know, because of the pandemic. And I think a lot of retirees used to, you know, be bus drivers, right? And now they're probably rethinking that. It's like, well, I think I really want to retire. So it's an issue, and I just want to keep on top of it and look forward to having that 15-minute frequency again. Thank you.
You bet. I'm going to just say one other thing real quick. So we were awarded a federal grant, research and it's not development, it's R&D grant from the federal government for creative COVID solutions. And one of the things we're going to be using our funding for is for improved air filtration on buses themselves. And we're going to not be shy about that, so that not only riders know about that, but also prospective drivers. We're doing everything we can to make sure we have a safe work environment for our drivers. There's a plastic barrier that's already put up that provides some insulation. Masks being required by both drivers and riders helps. And I think improved filtration, air filtration will also help. So we're trying to be creative, Councilmember Avila, and we're doing everything we can. Thank you.
Thank you again, Craig. All right. Hey, this is really good. We have a presentation this afternoon. Next up is our presentation about collaboration between Silver Key and Vita and the Fountain Valley Senior Services. And we invite them to come forward.
Oh, I'm gonna see it.
She's gonna.
I have one good like.
And if you would, introduce yourselves when you get.
Oh,
Hello, I'm Jolene Hausman. I'm the Executive Director of Fountain Valley Senior Center, and this is Gail Nails, the CEO of Invita, and our lovely friend Jason DeBueno had to step out and take a call, and he's the CEO of Silver Key. I haven't been to a meeting in a while, especially not in person, so it's nice to see some new faces.
Thank you,
And-
honey.
Yes. And you're not on up right now, but I can hear you. So we really wanted to just come and give you guys an update about what the collective has done during COVID. I like to say it's the silver lining to COVID because everybody is so sick of the negative news out of COVID. And this is all positive news stemming from COVID and our collaborative impact across the community. Go ahead, Jessica.
Thank you.
Next, Jessica. That's okay. So our three agencies have formed a transportation collective. And why we did this was to increase communication across all specialized transit providers in the region. And we hope to grow and incorporate the smaller agencies as this becomes more sound, to have less declined rides across the community, increase vehicle capacity, and to best utilize all forms of tax dollars in the community. And for those of you that are new to PPRTA, specialized transit is above and beyond paratransit. So it's for anyone over the age of 60, you automatically qualify through AAA and Older Americans Act dollars. And then we provide door-through-door transportation for those that are disabled in the community. So luckily I broke my left foot and not my right foot, because if I broke my right foot, I wouldn't be able to drive. And if you guys got to see me try and get in and out of my house every day with stairs, it's quite hilarious. So I would actually qualify for specialized transit if it was my other foot. And so we do a lot of intellectual disabilities for people who would wander or who would be a danger to be left alone, as well as physical disabilities in our specialized transit. Go ahead, next, Jim. So the solutions that the collective have come to over the last year is we now have a combined database where we all use Route Match. And so now we can actually schedule rides for each other. So if somebody calls us and our vehicles are full that day, and one of the other agencies has a available opening, we can just go ahead and put that person on somebody else's bus. So the amount of declined rides has greatly decreased, and we're best utilizing our vehicles. We also share dispatch now. So if somebody calls Fountain Valley and we're busy, someone from Invita or Silver Key will answer. So the hold times are less. There's less messages. There's lots of messages when we're not open, but less messages when we're open. And it also now allows us to actually allow our dispatch to take vacations and be able to cover time off without just scrambling internally. We are capitalizing on utilizing funding. It's been great working with PPACG and the transfer of the RTA funds to them and the 5310. And we're hoping in the future to grow that even more. And PPRTA plays a great role in that. With the local funds, it allows PPACG to leverage the federal funds and the federal match to bring even more dollars into our community. All three of the agencies are very client-centric. We work with very special needs populations and very vulnerable populations. So our drivers really know our riders, and we do a lot of APS reports and ensure the safety of our passengers, both on our vehicles and that they're safe in the homes and the agencies that they go to. And overall, we've had much fewer declined rides. So I already talked about our shared database, which was phenomenal. Back in May, when COVID was hitting its peak and nobody wanted to go out in public, we joined forces and made the shared database operational in less than 60 days, which is virtually impossible, and we made it happen. So I do have to give huge props to Invita's IT team because we are not IT centric. And Route Match really stepped up and helped us. Over the last year, we've made sure our operational platform is sound and that communication works well within the agencies. We now have all 3 of our transportation managers meeting bi-weekly, face-to-face, to iron out any difficulties. And one thing we've seen, in the past, transit has been so territorial. And so the great thing about this now is we've opened up, there's trust and respect amongst the agencies, and now our staff trust and respect one another. And so it's just increasing not only internal operations, but it feeds out to the service delivery to the clients. And then we also really understand our differences and similarities between our clients. Like Silver Key, for instance, the majority of their clients are over 60. And in Envita, the majority of their clients are special needs populations. And so when we're doing coverage for each other, we know what we're getting, and we're putting personalized notes in Route Match so that, say, Commissioner Gonzalez usually rides with me, but Silver Key has to pick him up. They can ask him about his nice little poodle Fluffy when they pick him up. So it's a warm transfer so that we just increase customer service and more, even more. Go ahead, Jessica. So now we do, I did touch on this one mostly, but the biggest obstacle we've had in the community for like the last 15 years is getting to the one call where people actually make one phone call and are guaranteed a ride. And guess what? It's happened. They make one phone call now. And if we can't do it, we look if the others can do it, and we can do the confirmation, and we all accept each other's rides. So people actually make one phone call now and they're guaranteed a ride. So we have achieved what has been trying to happen for about 16 years in the community. So we're really excited. Go ahead, next. And this is our proudest achievement of the collective right now. So in January, where we started scheduling for each other, each of these would have been a declined ride had they only called the one agency. And so now we had over 600, almost 700 rides that weren't declined in our community through the collaboration. So that means 700 people got to their doctor's appointments, their COVID test, dinner with their friends, wherever they needed to go instead of being home. Go ahead. So when I say we best utilize funding, we're working closely with PPACG through both 5310, AAA, and PPRTA. But we also got a grant from the Colorado Springs Health Foundation. Envita was the lead organization for that grant, and it's one of the largest grants they've given to a collective in this community. So we're really proud of that. And we're leveraging grants with outside just the immediate community as well. National Center for Mobility Management awarded a grant to do the design thinking of the collective. And then the Colorado Springs Health Foundation has greatly supported the specialized transit and the ability to expand specialized transit to also include mental health issues. As it's hard sometimes when you're struggling with some of those issues, and it can give you a more personalized ride experience and making sure you're getting the health care that you need. Next. So, as I said, it's very client centric. It's more than a ride, and there are clients, and they trust and respect us, and we trust and respect them. Through the struggle with COVID, we did see an immediate dip in COVID rides, but our agency bounced back faster than a lot of all 3 of our agencies bounced back. When I say our, I don't mean me, I mean us. And we saw an increase in ridership faster than a lot of communities. And I think it's because of the relationship that we have with our clients. Right now, we're actually at maximum capacity with all of our organizations. If we had more vehicles, we would give more rides. So we are absolutely doing the best that we can and ensuring that everybody gets around in the community. So COVID and special transit has been an interesting dynamic. We have all addressed the COVID situation in different ways and provided different services to the community. a lot of COVID testing, a lot of COVID vaccine rides. Envita even gave rides to people positive with COVID. And we're able to adjust within our agency since Jason and I do mostly 60 and older, then Gail picked up from the hospitals so that we didn't have, people with COVID on a bus that a 90-year-old's going to sit on later. So it's very dynamic between the three of us. There was also a need for a COVID hotline for transportation, and Envita got that up and running in less than 36 hours. So the number that's publicized in the community now, if you call it, you get a ride from one of the three of us to a COVID vaccine or testing site. And we all have additional funding for that that's above and beyond even our normal guidelines. So I don't think we would say no to anybody that requested that ride, regardless of age. And then we have done tremendous rides to vaccine clinics. And another example is at Fountain Valley Senior Center, we had 3 lovely positive breakthrough cases of COVID in the last week. We closed to the public to notify all 112 seniors. We pre-registered everybody that wanted a test and gave rides to 30 people in the last 2 days to testing sites. So we're all just able to be flexible and jump in where the other ones need help. Next. So in the future, we do want to increase the participating agencies, and we do want to leverage more funding. So we would like to ask PPRTA to think of us as you enter your new budget calendar, because the more you award us, the more rides we can give, but also the more money that you guys give us, the more PPACG can leverage that through federal funding and other funding sources. So it's really the tip of the iceberg that allows so much more funding to come into our community. And the more funds, the more the ridership. We all know that the senior population is only growing exponentially in our community, and we want to remain a community that is senior friendly and disability friendly. And through our partnership with you, you allow us to do that. Do you guys have any questions for us?
This is Yolanda. I just more have a comment.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So this is actually fabulous that the 3 agencies have come together and made something happen that couldn't happen for 16 years. I was on the board of Envita when it was Amblicab, along with Jason De Bueno. And I could tell then that Gail was making things happen, but really frustrated with this one match system. So I'm curious, and maybe this is a broader discussion and may have to be taken out offline, but I'm just really curious how that ended up coming together. And I'm wondering, is it sustainable? Because it seems to me that the 3 of you, the head of these organizations, have a really good chemistry going on. And so I just want to make sure that it's not just the chemistry with the 3 of you who do awesome work, that this is sustainable, that any person could jump into your positions and that it would still work this way. And as a person that has used Ambicab, and my mother used Silver Key services forever, that I just see how much these organizations bring to our communities and provide, and not leaving a lot of our seniors left hanging, our persons with disabilities, and to be able to go to the hospitals. So I'm curious about, that. And I just wanted to point out, to your point, how much you bring to the table, and probably in the big picture, save our different jurisdictions a lot of money. So thank you for all that you do, and keep up the
So,
good work.
Yolanda, this is Gail Nels with Envita. I'd like to answer a little bit more around the question you're asking about sustainability and how it all came to happen. We really had some federal support that helped us get things on the ground with that National Center for Mobility Management. We got an FTA grant from Access and Mobility. And then we leveraged more of those grants with the money that you saw that Jolene promoted. And then we also took advantage of some COVID money to help build out the infrastructure to make this all happen. And we are very, I should say, acutely aware that right now it is the trust among the three of us that has made this happen. You know, we're able to have a vision, we were able to go out and get grants and work together collaboratively for the benefit of our community. But as we work together and iron out more of these operational issues, we hope to see more operational or back office efficiencies that would then lower the cost per ride and deliver more rides in that manner. We are actively and continue to pursue more federal funds around this. And we really do appreciate the MMOF funding that is also some match that we use for delivering more rides. So it has been a braiding of state, local, and federal funds that have made this possible. It is the dedication of the people in the room and our staffs that have made this possible. And I think it's the private not-for-profits that have that ability to rally around a mission and to get things done in a faster environment than the public agencies can. And so we encourage other agencies to join us as we operate and reach out and understand what it means to be part of this collaboration. We are looking for more agencies to join us so that we can look at more operational efficiencies to deliver more rides. And it is not just the seniors, it is for the intellectual and developmentally disabled. It is for people that are suffering with substance use disorders. And there's people that are perhaps right now, Invita is engaged with a lot of opioid and suicide prevention programs. So we are acutely aware of what we do in the community and how we can leverage what we are doing personally and make this more institutional and sustainable. And so we're looking at 5311 funds and others, 5310. Anything else?
Thank you so much, Gail. And I really appreciate the forward thinking on all of your parts.
Thank you.
Okay. Jolene, anything else? Excuse me, anything else?
I just wanted to thank you guys very much for having us here today. And hopefully next time I see you, I'll be walking with some crutches. Awesome.
Well, let me just clear my throat here. Let me just thank Jolene, Gail, and Jason for being here and giving us such a wonderful. I look at the briefing, and for us to consider future help on that, we certainly will. Thank you. Okay, next up is the infamous PPRTA Matrix 3. So I'll I'll turn it over to Rick for this to start.
So for the past year or so, the board and the CAC have been considering concepts to be applied to the PPRTA 3 vote that the board has tentatively scheduled for November of 22. And over the period of months, a variety of authors and sources have added items to our list. It's now up to 17. And at the last board meeting, the new number 17 was added. But we had 4 or 5 unresolved items from last month that we need to talk about, and Gail's going to talk about that, and then she'll hit the new number 17.
All right, thank you, Rick.
Thank you. So as Rick mentioned, we made it through a lot of items. And you see, since there's so many iterations, I'm going to have to start putting the notes on here, the dates on there when the last revisions were, for you to help keep track of all this. But as you recall, we made it through 11 of the first 12 items, deferring item 7 until we had the opportunity to talk about items 13 and 14. I know that there's going to be maybe another closed executive session and some maybe discussions that might help inform items 15 and 16, and then we'll have an open discussion about that later. And there's item 17. So what I'm proposing is to kick off with item 13, 14, and then circle back to item 7. If you want to refresh yourselves with that, if that's acceptable, Mr. Chair.
Yes, yes, let's do that. All right, item 13, which was previous, as mentioned, item number 4, moving from the A list to the B list.
And right, and I think it's going to be important for us to talk about 13, 14, and 17 together because as the CAC rightly pointed out, staff has not been in favor of having some of the options to move to the A to B list open, but now that we've talked about some potential regulatory requirements or force majeure items that we could not control or deliver an A-list project to give ourselves some options in the future. So bear with us as we talk through these things, and I'll try to go through all three.
You
But
bet.
item 13 was previously presented as the questions about moving from the A-list to the B-list. Should all the entities complete their A-list before an entity can move to their B-list? And that was just looking more from a specific entity standpoint. And then should the ballot language be revised to move to the B list after they've completely funded their A list, again, independently of those entities? Staff did not recommend changing the ballot for, I guess, this unknown purpose, why there would be a need to change when this was originally contemplating. Staff did come up with a potential solution for consideration that if there was a desire to prepare for movement to the B list, that we could consider putting, again, with appropriate ballot language, but modifying the ballot language slightly and then adding an engineering advancement program to the A list. So for example, if we were approximately halfway through the A list or through the PPRTA authorization, and the board, we felt like we were in a position from revenue and progress that the board would like to reprioritize B-list projects or come up with maybe the top 1 or 3 projects that we could start the engineering in advance of getting the full construction funds available. And if you recall, I mean, you guys been around this for a while, project lifecycle project at a minimum is going to take 3 years from cradle to grave. Sometimes it can take, a decade or more, depending on the size and the nature of the project and where funding is going to lie in it. So this was just going to give that program was a potential consideration if the board wanted to have some ability to start advancing the engineering on those B-list projects while A-list was still being completed. So that's item 13. I do want to say this is an item that the CAC did not necessarily agree with staff's recommendation.
Go ahead, Director Williams.
Thanks. I've got a question prompted by a challenge that sometimes comes up. So some of these projects depend upon acquisition of property.
Yes.
If you have, and there's sometimes folks who are unwilling to sell their property. And we created Pikes Peak RTA, where Pikes Peak RTA has no power of eminent domain. It was specifically reserved to the member entities. We had litigation on this with respect to the Woodman Academy interchange, and the court said, yes, that's the way it needs to be. So what happens? And this, so Jennifer, this is partially you here. Okay, good. Making sure, because sometimes, I'm looking at Gail, but Jennifer may be the real one who has to
That's why we're
answer.
in the same corner.
Yeah. So what happens when a public body lacks the intestinal fortitude to proceed with eminent domain? Because it is possible you could have folks on a body who will not exercise that ability, which would then prevent us, I think under the current wording, from ever doing the B-list project unless we just left a gap in the road or something. So this may be a hole that we didn't think of at the time.
Well, you're correct under PPRTA 1 or 2. I think this would be covered by the language we're formulating as part of number 17 here, which would be sort of the greenhouse gas, force majeure, COVID, the world explodes, we don't know what's going to happen, sort of. If one of those things happens, we can skip a project language.
Okay. So I think we probably need to have, because we had a member of city council who who expressed reservation on acquisition of property. And And so we probably need to write that as we address this caveat broadly enough that includes a member entity's governing body refusing to exercise that control. And
Yeah, and I was contemplating those types of things. I'm not saying this language is final, but I mean, we have local, state, federal regulations, acts of judicial, governmental, legislative, or regulatory authorities. So I think that would be covered under a non-action of a governmental authority or other force majeure events. So that in my brain, what I'm formulating there is something that would cover that type of action as well.
okay, so I'd like, obviously, when we get to the wording, it needs to be that, because I could see, well, that's not an outside act. That's one of your own entities who failed to take action. And I know when I became a commissioner, we had not connected Baptist and Hodgen because the prior board would not take the necessary steps to acquire the property. And so you had D38 driving buses way out of their way in order to connect and other issues. And finally, we were able to proceed. So that's, I can foresee that happening in potential issues. And so I do want us to cover that. Because yeah, we say it's great, but then there's a new council or commission or trustees elected. And they say, no, I'm not going to use eminent domain. I will never use eminent domain. And so we literally can't build the project. So let's please, if we can draft that broadly enough to include that. Thanks.
Is there, I was going to say, is there enough discussion? Do we want to wait till we get through all the other items before we start accepting?
The next item is completely independent. I would like to circle back, before we leave this topic, I'd like to just pass out a couple more pieces of information, one from staff's recommendation and more follow-up with the CAC. And I don't know if Mr. Godfrey would like to come back to it. And then I'd like to talk about number 17, because again, it's slightly contradictory for what staff recommendation was, but for a different reason. I mean, it's something new that we've been contemplating as Ms. Ivy and Director Williams were just talking about. I did want to say, though, if we were to consider adding this program for an engineering advancement, staff would not be proposing an initial budget for it. It's something that could be out there that we would want to look at probably midway through the program and to see what our revenue projections are, where we are for projects. And if we looked at a conservative number from our revenue projections in those last 5 years, you assume that, and it covers more than 80% of your 80% of that fund covers everything that you anticipate for you, and maybe you can start adding those projects in, because you would be anticipating having some B-list construction dollars towards the end of your program. But you'd want to get ahead of that engineering piece for those first couple years in consideration to advance the project. So let's say you're in year 8 or 9, you've got your A-list done, you've got the engineering done on B-list project, you can start construction on that B-list, as opposed to really artificially somewhat creating a 2 to 3 year plus gap in there. So I'll just mention that. And then I will shift down to item 17. This is one that, and I apologize, I think I missed part of this discussion with the Zoom connection at the end of last meeting, but it sounds like there was a lot broader based discussion about whether or not the board should consider adding ballot language that we could basically, as I think Jennifer, you just described it, skip over an A list and move to the B list if for some reason we can completely fund that project or complete the project really due to a regulatory change or a judicial governmental legislative act and regulation. So staff is in agreement with some of the unknowns and the regulatory requirements are coming out. That's something that we probably should consider differently. And just given the state of some of the things that are facing us right now, even as we prepare for RTA 3. So those were the two things I wanted to add and move to 17.
And I know we were trying to finish this list at a certain time. Do you remember what time that was, Rick? No. So I guess on both of these, I would probably recommend, we're going to go into executive session to talk about greenhouse gas. I would probably recommend that we not make any final decisions on these two until November. Because we have to have a final rule, wouldn't you think, Rick, before we could start really wrapping our head around it? Or would you prefer to have a final decision in October?
I don't know that we need to have a final decision on this, but I think we need to have the general sense, the direction to give Jennifer Ivy some direction, what we want to do and decide between now and really as we finalize the ballot language. Obviously sooner would be better, but I think that it would be good to be prepared to know what that could look like and even get a sense of how that might be received from others in the community before it goes to the electorate. So again, don't think any final decision needs to be made, but I think we have to have some options on the table. I would say even if we know what Colorado's greenhouse gas regulations are going to look like, there's enough other things floating around, both on a federal and some other state things that are kind of floating around that make us a little nervous that we just don't know what our requirements might be in some regards in the future. So
I guess then, given that discussion, I could just say that I would lean towards we're going to need to have the flexibility. So yes, on 17. And we may have to just do an engineering advancement fund, with $0 so that we have the ability to be flexible given the current regulations or the future regulations. Jim wants to come up.
Yes, Jim, I know Jim. Rick, yeah.
If I may, something else, this is Jim Godfrey, Chair of the CAC. That may be considered, and Jennifer would be the best one to probably answer this, but when we say a project must be funded, if it's in the budget, but we haven't allocated or starting spending funds on it, does that mean it's funded because it's in the budget? Or do we actually have to start expending funds on it for it to be in the funded category? So it was just a nuance there. If it's not in the budget, you hadn't programmed it, then it's not in the budget, it's not funded. But if you've got it included in your budget, does that mean it's funded? So just something else to muddy the water.
Yeah, I think the nuance there is if the budget, if it's been appropriated. I mean, if this board has taken an action and there's a line item for a project and that money has been appropriated to that project, and that seems to me like it has been funded. Whereas if it's sort of a aspirational line item in somebody else's budget that's not part of our, but that to me is not funded. Sure, that's budgeted, expected, but if it's actually been appropriated for in the current year, that seems to me to be funded. Rick can probably speak to it from a more practical sense of what we've done in the past, or Bev.
The easy answer is if it's in the budget, it's funded. But as we've all seen over the decade and a half, there's lots of change orders. So that's the problem area is if you declare, let's say it's a transition year, it's 2023 or 2024, and in the budget, there's some A's and some B's. Are the A's completely funded? If you have to do some change orders to the A's in a budget that also contains B's, have you violated the spirit of the IGA? Or I'm sorry, in the ballot. So it's that, Jim, that question's been on our radar, Bev, Andy, and me. We've started discussing it, but we haven't come up with a final answer to propose to the CAC and the board. So maybe we can put our heads to that and have that for next month.
And then we got another discussion come on up, point of view, and I think it was the lone dissenting vote on the Citizens Advisory Committee.
Yes, I admit to being a troublemaker. When you say this, I'm going to go to 17 specifically. It says consider, and it doesn't mean make a decision now. And then it says completely funded. And I translated that to perhaps using program funding in lieu of an A or B list. The second thing is in the green, and I'm looking at colored version. The staff recommendation is yes, given the currently developing state regulatory and all the rest. Basically, when it says developing, it's unknown yet. So you're gonna ask, or the board's gonna approve you pursuing something without even knowing what you're pursuing. It's unknown. And the currently, I gotta read my writing. By the way, I probably didn't preface it. You have a Schedule A and B list for a reason. This is for the sake of discussion, it's a wish list provided by the ballot language of projects rated to a certain degree of what is most important. If you go back to PPRTA 1, we ended that with setting up, and a matter of fact, I think Commissioner or Councilman Williams was the chair at the time. Regardless, we set up a pool to be spent on the A list. I'm sorry, not the A list. To finish off PPRTA 1, and that pool started about $8 million. And that was money that they didn't know how they were going to complete all of these projects, part of which was because the city annexed the project, and it was no longer, it was still under the heading of the, on the ballot. It was part of the project that couldn't be completed because it was the city, and then they pooled the money so that the two entities could finish. And I speak specifically of North Carefree, where there's a project being completed by the county, and the rest of it has been, it's been dealt with. So the money basically has been spent on PPRTA 1. But there are so many unknowns involved and here. And currently, as far as I understand it, the state is supposed to be done with their proposed rules and regulations of, it's supposed to be in January or February. And why are we saying how you should react to it when you don't even know what the new rules are, new regulatory rules? And I think a big portion is how you maintain the fact that you have this Schedule A and B, so that when you have that vote, the list in front of the voters, they know what it is. I'm not sure it's even the A and B list. I know the A list is on it. But having said, and I stand to be corrected, does the ballot initiative previously, do they include both A and B lists?
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't direct.
A, B, and C when there was a C.
Yeah, that was the first. Then you decided to do away with the B. But literally, I think this is premature to say something positive. I think it should be held off. And I happen to agree with everything except the fact that it's a possibility of creating a program fund, another program fund on the ballot, so to speak. So that's one of the reasons I objected to it. I thought there was more unknowns and more what ifs that you had to deal with at a later date.
Thank you.
Yeah, the CAC recommended 16-1 in favor of item number 17, and Reb was the one vote against.
Correct. Give it perspective.
I can add something. Did you have comments, Jen?
I was just gonna say to Reb's point that, he mentioned, he used the term wish list, and I would also sort of refer to these 17 items as a wish list direction. We have approximately 362 days until we'll actually certify this ballot. So There's a lot of work that's going to come between now and when this ballot is actually certified. So just for that, what that's worth.
Go ahead, Director Williams.
Okay, so we're looking for guidance on which ones right now?
13 and 17, as I understand it.
13 and 17.
I think we actually should be discussing item 7 again as well, because this also is a consideration for when you might advance a B-list project. So if we could revisit that item. So again, it was about moving a B-list project to the A-list. The question had come up if there was, when a B-list receives other funds, not necessarily some of those discretionary grants we discussed last time, but it was really intended to be more developer funds or a donation, or if some other circumstances arise where you are leveraging other non-discretionary grant funding. Staff again, did not recommend changing the ballot language. And as we discussed in August, that if a grant funding was received, that the board could go through the state and federal discretionary grant match fund. And then there's the consideration for majority and supermajority was still out there as well. So those three things I think need to be considered. What could constitute a movement from A to B. Staff would be in favor of considering the regulatory changes we've contemplated in item 17, but not necessarily making a changes for the circumstances that are outlined in items 7 or 13.
Okay. Let me just go through these and offer some suggestions and see if folks agree. So in item 7, I like the approach of having the grant match program as the way to get there, as opposed to otherwise. I think one of the hallmarks of the Pikes Peak RTA is you knew what you were getting. And to the extent there is some other critical project that comes up, an entity has other sources of funding that it can address, or you can use a broader category of things, but I think we have to deliver what we promise. And if we don't, then it makes it harder. So I favor having the discretionary grant program as an A-list project, or the match for grants as an A-list project. And I don't favor a mechanism that allows the board to bypass the vote of the people, moving a B to an A, short of something that's in that. So, well, it's the same way it was work on a project that's not in there at all, which is you have a grant match that is in the A list, so people know it's there. And then if, for example, since you asked the question and I was down at a opening for one of the military connection routes in your district, then the plan would be you would PPRTA, the sponsoring entity could come to PPRTA and say, we would like to take this out of our allocation and make this part of a grant match, and the board would have to approve it. And the sponsoring entity. No, the grant match would be an A-list project.
So I think to answer. If this clarifies, I think what I'm hearing is that you could move a project from B or from no list at all, as long as it was a grant match project.
Right, that's what I said. No,
I'm just translating.
I said you do not have a mechanism to move the B to the A. You were funding it as an A-list project under the grant match program.
Yeah, he's calling it an A list because it's grant funded. Is that? All right.
And staff outlined that in item number 11 when we discussed that last month.
So to follow up on that, so in item number 7, then we said that it's board deferred. Did we just resolve it? So
That's what I'm trying to get us to.
Got
Yeah.
That's what surprised me. I thought we
Thought we might.
Stuff.
Does anybody object to that?
I believe we ran out of time.
Yeah.
Okay. Hearing no objection then, on 13. It was 13 and 17. Actually, I think that resolves 13, doesn't it? Yeah, that resolves 13.
I don't think I've heard the resolution to the difference between the CAC recommendation and the staff recommendation on the independent movement, each member government independent movement from A to B versus collective as it's been. I think that's still different and unresolved.
And if I could add, it sounds like maybe collectively you have agreed on the response to item 17, which is concurring with staff's recommendation, but I don't know that you guys have voted on 7 yet, and I'd like to for the minutes.
Well, let me do the easy one then. So 17. If
No,
for some
sev-
reason we can't proceed with a project, then we're allowed to put a little hold on that and move on. The wording of it, I think, has to be, this is part of what Ivy's going to earn money on here. But I think that has to be there. If we get barred from doing a project by the Greenhouse Gas Commission, then we have to be able to move forward. Does anyone object to that?
No.
Let's make a motion and then we'll second it and discuss it. So
We've done these others kind of. Okay, I made the motion. Lahina seconded.
Okay, the motion's been made, seconded. Item is up for discussion. Number 17. Item is number up for discussion. Anyone out there online? Going once. All right, I hear no further discussion. All in favor of item number 17, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? I hear none. Item 17 is approved as written. So we'll go back to number 13 now, Gail. Now, say again, Rick, or who said so?
Mr. Chair, I was just getting the number, so that was 8-0. So my understanding for 18, or I'm sorry, 17 to, so 9. I believe the next one, I think it would be, hopefully the next easiest one to clean up is item 7, which I believe you guys have verbally discussed and concurred upon, but we haven't had a vote on it.
Right, we were just discussing number 7. So we can go back to number 7.
Okay, so I'll move that with respect to item 7, that there be an A list for discretionary grant match fund. And there would be otherwise no movement from B to A.
Okay, there's a motion. Do I hear a second?
Okay, say that one more time.
That there be an A list for discretionary grant match. State or federal, which would allow us to provide matching funds with respect to projects that are not on the A list. One of the things we will need to do, and so I would suggest this is probably more of the discussion part. We're going to need to put in, I presume, in the IGA, what the vote is of the board to move it up. Because it affects funding on other projects. So we may, so let's first decide whether we want it, and then we can talk about what that vote should be. It might be 2/3, it might just be the normal majority.
So I would second that motion, or is it going to be an initial $0 on the ballot?
Yes.
Thank you. So I'll second that. Then we can talk about the number of people who have to vote.
Yeah, we need to define the supermajority. So
Is that more than 2/3?
no, 2/3 is supermajority.
Yes. Okay. And we have, let me double check here. We have 9 counting online.
Right, so you
Yeah.
need 6 votes instead of 5.
Right.
I am fine with super majority of 2/3 as well. I think that
2/3.
makes.
Is
a lot
everyone
of
agreeable?
sense.
Yes.
Then I
Yes.
will incorporate that in the motion to do 2/3.
And I will add a second into that motion, Commissioner
So
Williams.
I'm sorry, 2/3 of the members present or 2/3 of the entire board?
Present.
How many do we have to have? a
It's on the
quorum?
agenda, right? So you know it's on
5.
the agenda. We all have the ability to have alternates appointed. And so. Yeah. No, 3 and 5 will not get you there. 2/3 of those present.
All right. Do we need to vote on that separately? Yes.
No, I incorporated it as part of the motion. So just call a vote on the whole motion.
All right. I've got a motion. Did I get a second? Oh,
I did.
yep. The vice chair seconded. Okay, so this is the vote. The vote is all in favor of the motion of 2/3 majority of those present.
And establishing
And
a
is
federal and state discretionary grant match program.
that motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Wait.
Yep.
I thought we
No,
need some
I missed
discussion.
discussion. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yolanda, I'm sorry. You're correct. We're open for discussion.
So I just want to be clear because, so Wayne, your motion is, and I don't think it's stated in there. It's like to move forward on the projects, on projects B, if there is other funding available to move these match grants, to move them forward. In addition to A, or maybe even in lieu of A. I'm just want to understand that clearly.
Sure, it's a good question. It's not necessarily a B list project. It could be something that's not on the list at all.
Oh,
A bridge collapses on I-25. CDOT says we'll fix it now if you guys provide a 10% local match. We could opt to do that. And so even if it weren't on the list, and so that gives, but there, we don't know all the discretionary match programs that'll be there. We've seen that with I-25 projects. Cimarron was one of those, for example, that had a whole host of various sources that were cobbled together. The GAP project is another one. You've got the military routes that were approved with Schriever and with Fort Carson's Southern Gate, which is either 19 or 20. I forget which the new one was.
Well, and there's this whole new revitalizing Main Streets program as
Yeah,
well.
so we don't know what it is, and chances are we may not know what's there. And so the idea is to avoid having to spend $500,000 potentially on a ballot question, which is what we did for the GAP. If you've got 2/3 of the board that says, let's go forward with advancing this B list or addressing this cool military grant. If, Peterson Air Force Base comes in and says, we can get all this funding out of a federal program if you guys provide a match, then that allows us to have some flexibility to do that.
okay, so that answers my questions. And further with it doesn't even have to be on the B list, but what if we end up funding B and other projects that aren't on the list because they're so good, and when we don't get to our A list, we maybe just get to 1 or 2 of our A list because these opportunities of funding come up and matches that look so good for B list or list aren't on there. I just want to make sure that it is, if we have an A list, that we're saying that's a priority. That's a priority. And yes, we can't foresee everything in the future, especially 10 years down the road. But I'm just kind of concerned that that may end up overtaking the monies or the fundies in PPRTA from, the priority A list. So those are just, I'm not debunking anything or saying, no, let's not do this. It's just a question that I have. And if
So-
anybody else has that kind of question.
Well, thanks, Yolanda. It's Lojinos. And what I would say, I think that's why most of us were wanting the supermajority. So if we saw some sort of trend, the rest of the group could stop that trend if need be. I don't see that happening, but I think that's why we did kind of request the supermajority.
And I just add to that to say that,
That's a good point. Yeah.
yeah, and certainly that'll be an argument that'll be made. If you come in with, hey, I need $3 million to provide 24 4-lane Distriver Air Force Base because it's a discretionary grant. Okay, that sounds pretty good. If what you come in with is I need $400 million, I think the rest of the board is going to look at that and go, we're not going to be able to get the A-list projects done. No. And so I do think that that's why you need that mechanism, that you can't do it just with an entity. It also requires a 2/3 vote of this board. And so I think that provides that guarantee.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to point out on staff's response to item 11, we actually detailed the demonstration that the member government would have to show that they could still complete their A-list projects in addition to getting this local match fund. And we did discuss that a lot last month. We just didn't have a chance to go back to 7 and really clean this item up. So this is kind of a lingering topic. I am going to take the part of the motion that Mr. Williams put in place for item 7 and also include it to define supermajority with item 11 so that it's clear moving forward.
Very good. And I think, did Jim, you wanted to make a comment?
I just wanted to clarify. So, because this is kind of a combination between number 11 and 13 with the super grant A-list item. I think we discussed in the CAC, it goes in initially as a 0 funded item. And then the municipality supporting that grant takes that out of their allocation. It's not out of the overall fund, if you will. So if the city has a grant for a project that they want to move up, it's part of the city's allocation that they put into that, move it into that fund to pay for that. I think that's what we all agreed upon when we did.
Yeah, with the caveat that it could be multiple sponsoring entities. that
Correct.
May do it. So if
Correct.
there were,
It was
Yeah.
not in addition to taken out of the overall pot and added to that.
No, that's a good
A-list
point.
and the entity would have to agree to it.
Right, right.
So you can't just say, I'm going to take this, I'm going to take Rama's money and use it for this cool project.
Right, and we had a lot of discussion about this, the idea of this whole B to A list thing anyway. We've done that in RTA 2. Platte Avenue Bridge is an example of where we've added something because we had a grant. The same thing with the Fontanero Railroad Bridge. That was a B list item. It was economies of scale to do this at the right time when we had some things. And the important thing from our perspective at the CAC was that we at the CAC and you at the board have these discussions and can support your decision to the public when we say, hey, you move this item up. Well, here's why, and here's the rationale and the things they went to. They may not like it, but at least we've gone through the discussion at that point. And so that was the key thing on the CAC and moving from B to A. We've done it. And because it was a right thing to do in some cases because of grants and other things. So anyway, just wanted to clarify that. Thanks.
Any further discussion? Online or in presence? All right, I hear none. So, okay, how do I, the vote for this is for the motion of, let's read that back, for the motion of
Motion is
Yes. Okay,
to establish a match as an A list for federal and state discretionary matches with the consent of the member entity from whom the money is coming, and with a 2/3 concurrence of the Pikes Peak RTA board. What? Of those present.
very good. All in favor, state aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I hear none. It was unanimous decision. Motion passed.
Mr. Chair, can I just get a couple points of clarification on that?
Yes,
I just want to make sure that we actually, or the board approved the establishment of that grant match fund
yes.
last time. I think the only thing I want to make sure it's clear in the understanding for the record that the board is just defining what supermajority means. The staff's recommendation was that if it had different levels, if it was already an A list, it wouldn't be one. If it was B list, it was a majority, and if it was a non-A or B list supermajority, is that still?
No, it's just super
Super
majority.
majority across the board.
This is why we needed clarification. Thank
Yes.
you.
Exactly.
So, okay. Yep.
Okay,
And I would note that ultimately, right, all of this is going to get written up in a formal document that we will have the chance to parse the actual wording on. We're just giving guidance and direction
at this time to
at
the
this
staff.
time. Right.
Rick,
So does the board want to spend some more time on the matrix, or do you want to reserve the balance of your time for
I was
the
looking,
executive session, the other smaller items, then get the executive session, then the two items after the executive session?
yeah, you were reading, I could see you reading my mind. Yeah. Would it be, are we behind the power curve if we take on 13 and the other remaining items that are next board meeting?
Seems to me that 13 is pretty interrelated with the conversation we've been having about moving things. So before everyone forgets what we talked about this month, by next month,
Let's finish up. Let's finish 13 and then we'll move to we'll end the discussion on the matrix 3.
So again, just a reminder, with 13, it was about whether or not we, again, move a B list to an A list, and if a member government can move independently to their B list projects. Again, staff did not recommend that, and I think that's somewhat consistent with what I've heard on the discussion. But we had thrown out there is a potential solution. I guess the question was out there if we wanted to consider an engineering advancement program to be placed on the ballot for consideration.
Yes, Director Williams.
I'd leave it as is. If an entity wants to put that in their list of A-list projects, that would be the way we do it as opposed to a global one. And we've let entities kind of be pretty flexible, and I don't see a need to do this.
Director Gonzalez.
Yeah, I think I actually asked a lot of questions on this one last time because I said, well, what if, okay, so it might influence you to put a B project on the A project that you would otherwise put on B because you might want to get to it, but then it might mess somebody else up and it doesn't keep you on that honest thing. So I thought at the end, we were like, well, no, I think we'll do a really good job of being, you know, as accurate and as we could. And so I was okay with keeping it as was.
Yeah.
So, but I had a lot of questions on it. That was my takeaway as well. So.
And I think a lot of the projects are sufficiently broad that if one entity was holding it up, that you could do other things. So there've been things like Rama's, I think, was repaving projects. Well, if you wind up with everyone else we're holding up on one entity, then they can do some more repaving projects within there. So I think there's enough flexibility within what entities are listed.
Yes, Jennifer.
I think what Rick pointed out earlier, the one maybe unresolved, maybe unstated, but resolved issue is whether we want to bifurcate or bifurcate, whatever the word for that would be, the list so that every government has their own list and they move from their A to their B independently of all the other member governments. And
How do
staff's
we-
recommendation was no, but I haven't heard this board say yes or no definitively.
Makes for a more complicated ballot. The following 5 groups of A-list projects will be done. Each one could. I'm.
Don't open it back up. That's what was my
original Yeah.
argument, and you guys just know, so.
Yeah, I'm not sure we need to do that. At least for now. And this is one we can change it.
While we're clarifying, I just wanted to make sure it was on the record.
Okay, Rick, you had one more comment?
Just to represent the CAC's vote, the CAC did vote 9-4 in favor of adding some wording that allowed each member government to move from their A's to the B's. That would probably just be a single sentence in the ballot that says each member government can move from their A to their B as they completely fund their A's.
No, because then you'd have to define the ballot as to whose A's are which. And that's not the way the ballot's been defined in the past. It's been
Okay,
listed.
I'm just speaking for the CAC, not for myself.
Right. I think it's a great idea. I just think it unnecessarily complicates the ballot.
It's not my personal opinion. I'm representing the whole of the county.
We understand.
I'm representing my personal opinion that I don't want to have to draft that.
So let me make it formal.
Yes,
I would move that we retain the present system with completing A list before we move to B list.
do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Carr. I have a motion and a second. Floor is open for discussion. I hear none. Therefore, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All opposed? I hear none. The motion passes. That's item number 13. With that said, do I hear any, I had there was a recommendation before we took that discussion and vote on item 13 that we clear the decks. We finish with matrix 3, PPRTA matrix 3 now, and we'll move on to the remaining items. So it looks like there's 4 informational pieces next, D, E, F, and G, or do we need to take a break at this very moment, come back, finish those, then go into the executive session? Comment.
Maybe
Director
we
Williams.
should take a break and then directors can let you know during that break, which, if any of those, they actually need a presentation on.
Yes, excellent point.
And if, unless there's someone that needs to burningly provide information on one of those, we've got it all in the written report, I think.
Yes. All right. There's been a recommendation on the board that we take a break, and those individuals that would make presentations on the remaining Delta Echo Foxtrot Golf, come to me, let me know, and then we'll do those before we go into executive session. If not, we'll take let's do a 15-minute break. Be back at 40. Be back at 40. I wonder if we should do that after. What do you think, Jennifer? Should we All right, I wanted to bring everybody, we'll reconvene. And we do have one other in item 8F that needs to be presented. And Jennifer, go ahead.
Yeah, so this is the El Paso County Monthly Change Order and Property Acquisition Report. So you might be wondering why in God's name I'm speaking to you. That's because we had a bit of a miscommunication. I didn't communicate well enough to Rick what I was hoping to have here as a sub item, which was a report. It's not really a change order, but it's closer to a change order than it is anything else. So this was where I was hoping to have it listed. It's a report on the county's progress with Avery. Last month, I reported to you on the city's progress with Avery, who has gone into bankruptcy. The county was in a bit of a different situation. They had actually already terminated their contract, I believe, prior to them going into bankruptcy, and were working on remediation items and working with the company that held the performance bond. Found a substitute contractor to do some repair work, to repair unsatisfactory work on that project. And Jennifer can fill in the details, but what we have before you today, which is not in your packet, but I have reviewed, is the concept is really just that the county is entering into, and I'm recommending the PPRTA approve, entering into a release of the performance bond because the county / PPRTA have been made whole through the retainage that they had. And they don't need that performance bond any further because they can close out the contract without calling the performance bond.
Ms. Ivy did a great job. Jennifer Irvin, El Paso County Engineer. Ms. Ivy did a great job in summarizing this issue. I think we were lucky as we had were able to determine prior to the bankruptcy that the contractor was not performing. So we terminated the contract with Avery Asphalt, who was doing our crack seal work with the county, and terminated that in December 8th, 2020. And so we've been working this time to come to a settlement agreement that has actually been to our Board of County Commissioners already and received approval. And that now the final step is to make sure that we get the approval through the PPRTA. So what we've been able to do is negotiate the terms of that to retain the money, unearned money that they have, the 174,000, and then the retainage of the 23,000. And that money will be used toward a new contract to complete the work that was really undone or not done satisfactory. So this is an easier way. We'll be dealing with a new contractor with the money that we have negotiated, and it's an easier way than dealing with having to go through a contract with the bond company. So we feel like it's the best solution. So with that, I'm here for any questions.
My first question is this informational or do we need to approve this?
So I would like you to approve the PPRTA. I did ask for you to be a signatory since it was PPRTA funds that was being used on the project. So I apologize. I didn't catch that this was listed as an information item and we approved the agenda, but I would like approval on that.
Move to approve.
Second.
John
We have,
Grammar.
thank you, Mayor. Yeah. Okay, we've had a motion and we have a second, open for discussion. All right, I hear none. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? There is none. Motion's approved. All right, with that said, I don't think we have any other briefings. And so do we want to ask for a motion to go into executive session?
So yes, so I would ask for someone to make a motion to convene into an executive session pursuant to section 24-6-402 4B CRS for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions regarding both the third amended and restated intergovernmental agreement between the member governments, composition of the board and board member voting, and also the status of the Transportation Commission of Colorado rules governing greenhouse gas pollution reduction planning levels for transportation projects. And I dare somebody to repeat that all.
So moved.
Do I hear a second? I have a motion and a second to go into executive session. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None? We will clear the room of those who are not in the executive session, and Jessica will set up the,
Yep, and while we're clearing
The
the room, I'll
teams?
just make the statement for the record that I will be providing legal advice in this executive session. Therefore, no further recording is necessary of the executive session.
thank you. When we come back up, I'll remind Yolanda and the mayor to make that. All right, looks like everybody's back in. Sorry, I was reading an email. Okay, we will reconvene our September 8th meeting, and we'll move on to the two items we're going to vote on. The first, we'll need a motion for the composition of the board and board member voting. I'll need a motion from the
Yeah,
floor.
so, sorry, I was just gonna preview, as we discussed in open session a couple of meetings ago, there's a desire by some of the member governments to maintain adequate representation. I forget the exact wording that were in the resolutions on the board in light of additional members being admitted. So this is a continuation of that discussion to provide some guidance moving forward, how the board would like to handle that.
All right, do I have a motion?
Yes, I would move that we instruct Miss Ivy to go ahead and communicate our intentions with each attorney of each organization and prepare a IGA agreement next month
Do I
for
hear?
our review. Is that about right?
So I think the part that's missing is is to prepare an amendment to the establishing IGA to maintain the 333 voting power. So just to expand on that, so that would be 3 votes for the city, 3 votes for the county, and 3 votes divided among the other jurisdictions, which would not be a static number that would change over time as additional members are added.
Very good.
So moved.
Well, second, Mayor Graham.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion? None?
I will just, this is Mayor Graham, just speaking as one of the smaller municipalities, we did discuss this, our city council discussed it last night. I think the proposal that Ms. Ivy stated is as fair and as actionable as we can achieve. So from our perspective, we feel that's a good arrangement.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Appreciate that. Any other discussion? I hear none. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? There is none. I think with that, we have, I think that's 8 votes, one vote less since Director Williams had to depart.
Yep.
Okay, the second measure that we actually vote on is update on the status and consider public comment on DOT's proposed rulemaking. All right, yes,
So again, just an update on this item. We've reported on this last couple of meetings. The proposed rules are out and have been under review. I think yesterday there was a 28-page sort of report that came from CDOT just on the impact of the proposals. So this is sort of a moving process. We're currently in the period where they're holding the public meetings in all the regions. The public meeting for the region, for the Pikes Peak region is on September 24th. It's going to be both in person and I think by some sort of Zoom or electronic platform as well. And they are asking, so you can make public comment at these meetings, verbal or written. As I understand it, the rules may be revised one or more times between now and October 15th. October 15th is the final deadline for written comments to be submitted. So what I would propose, if the board would be so inclined, would be to authorize representatives of the PPRTA. Most likely, I know that your chair and vice chair are already planning to attend, and your executive director, to make verbal comments on behalf of the PPRTA, and we can discuss sort of what those concerns are at the September 24th meeting. And I would work with staff to bring back written comments to you at your October 13th meeting. That way we can have those finalized in advance of the 15th and react to any changes to the rules between now and then. It's okay. So that was sort of the update. That's where we're at in the process. And as I said, it's sort of a moving target. So we are watching the target move.
thank you. So I think we'll call for a motion to proceed with that strategy.
So before we get to a
Yeah.
motion, I guess I would just mention sort of what those general concerns are. And if others want to chime in with concerns that they have as well, but the concerns we've discussed at a staff level is, you know, what the definition of a regionally significant project is and how that impacts PPRTA projects. The lack of information about the offsetting credits for greenhouse gas reduction measures versus projects. Those aren't even available yet. And the rules are proposed to be in effect of January 1st. So that really doesn't give enough time for jurisdictions to even do the calculus of what the project impacts look like. And then also the waiver process that's outlined currently in the rules is sort of ambiguous at best. So we'd like to see the ability for more waivers. One example that was given at a recent meeting was, you know, what if Tesla wanted to bring a plant in, which is going to be very good for economically and for the environment, for the type of cars that they build, but we need to build infrastructure to get to them that's going to increase greenhouse gas emissions on one piece of paper. So the waiver process could be worked out a little bit better. And also the differentiation between areas that have stayed in attainment and areas that have not. So the Pikes Peak region has generally been in attainment, whereas some of your other areas, you know, Denver area has not been in attainment, and the rules don't really differentiate between those areas. So those are sort of the general areas of concern that we've been discussing on the staff level. And, you know, I know all of you have also been talking about those in your local governments.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. So I think the motion is there to proceed, use the process that we discussed and the strategy to continue to be involved with the rulemaking and to follow the process that we just discussed at length. So do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second. John Graham.
I think we got we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I hear none. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I hear none. The motion passes.
And so I'll work with staff to finalize sort of talking points for the 24th. Obviously, those will be a bit fluid depending on how that conversation goes. But we'll work with the chair and vice chair and executive director to make sure those are finalized and ready to go.
Perfect. Okay, as we move along to our last agenda item, the PPRTA member announcements. We'll start with out in Zoom land with Yolanda and the mayor.
I don't have anything.
I don't have anything either. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, let's go around the table. We'll start here with Andy. Anything else? Dan? Jennifer? Jennifer? Gail?
That the city may be approaching PPRTA for either for information or ask for a letter of support for a large grant we may be pursuing. We're still in the go, no go phase. So just to give you guys a heads up on that. Maybe something to bring forward.
Right. All right. Before we come around to us, I'll go out to the audience. Any other comments? Mayor. All right. Vice Chair. And nothing for me other than the fact that, yes, it was fun balloon riding this weekend and all the excitement that came along with that and being on Fox News 21. So I'll end it with that. With that, I ask for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? I hear none. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Hey, you bring me in right when we have to do this stuff. Yeah, what happened to these 2-hour meetings?